What's up guys, welcome back to Iron Will Tennis. In this video we are going to talk about how to help you guys find out your own player identity. When we say who you are on the court, we're not talking about the general categories that people tend to put themselves in. You know, I'm an aggressive baseliner, defensive baseliner, counter puncher, serve and volleyer. The problem with those is they're what we call a starting point, but they're too vague. Don't forget that when you guys play tennis, the same way as when you guys go through life, you have a personality. You have certain things that define you. When your friends talk about you, they don't put you into a one sentence or a one word category. They'll tell somebody things about you. And when you go to play any sport, it should be the exact same thing. People should understand that they have very individual qualities that make them a tennis player and that create an identity on the tennis court. So if you were to think about somebody like Rafa or Novak, they play similar in some senses, but there are other things that completely separate who they are. And then if you were to look at another two players, let's say you look at Federer and Andy Murray. Again, very high level skilled players, but very different in the way they play. And you wouldn't put them into just the category of aggressive baseliner, all court player, defensive baseliner, counterpuncher. You would look at them and say, when Rafa plays, this is the things that you want to avoid. These are the things you can potentially exploit. When Novak plays, these are his spots where he's weaker. These are the things that he likes to do. And you need to look at yourself the same way. Think about yourself in the sense of if somebody was telling you how to beat you, or let's put it into another sense. Let's say your friend is in the finals of a tournament and they're playing against somebody they've never seen before. You are the only person they're talking to before they play. Are you going to give them just a general, oh, you know, be careful, they're an aggressive baseliner, good luck? Or are you going to try to give them as much information as you can and let them kind of sort out how to deal with it? The thing that gets people in trouble when it comes to identifying themselves is they very often put themselves into these general categories. And the problem with that is it's too open-ended. And the problem that creates is that you then don't know how to actually practice. You're getting on court and you're going and saying, all right, let's just hit forehands cross court. Let's hit backhands cross court. Let's do some volleying or some approaching. Let's play a couple of points or a tie break. But your practices aren't geared towards you. They're geared towards what anybody could do. You've seen professional practices where it just looks like they're just hitting the ball back and forth. But I promise you, for certain high-level players, their coach has said, this is the thing that you need to do for 10 to 15 minutes because this is the thing that's going to separate your next match. You need to work on your changes of direction. You need to work on recognizing a short ball faster so that you're not letting the ball drop low. These things have more detail and more substance to them. So what we're going to do in today's video is actually give you guys a little exercise to help you basically figure out your own player identity, and then you should be able to form better practice habits as well as just better overall thought process going into matches. Because one of the main reasons that people lose matches is they don't really know who they are on the court and they're playing against somebody who does. I've seen many players lose matches to somebody that you would think they were better than, but the other person just knew how they wanted to play. They came out very specific on these are the shots I want to look for, these are the shots I don't want to hit, these are the places I want to put the ball as often as possible. And they were playing against people who I would say had more skill, but they were just approaching the game too general for what their opponent was capable of. So in this video, we're going to start this exercise right now. What I want you guys to do, if you have the ability or if you have the time, get a piece of paper, just like you see on this screen. You're going to cut the piece of paper in half right down the center, and you're going to give yourself two columns. On one side, I want you to put what we would call your positives, your strengths, or your preferences. Preferences is a really important one. And then on the other side, we're going to say your negatives, your weaknesses, and the things you try to avoid. That's where we're going to start. Now notice we're not saying that the categories don't exist, but what we're saying is within the category of you calling yourself an aggressive baseliner, or defensive, or counterpuncher, or serve and volleyer, what makes you special? What makes you have a fingerprint on the tennis court? So like you guys can see, we're gonna start here. Now I'm gonna fill this out for myself, and then as I fill it out for myself, I want you guys to basically think about it in the sense of what you would want to do. So for me, the first thing I would say as a positive is I'm very athletic and fast. I like to move. I'm not uncomfortable on the run, so I would say that I could easily put that into a positive side on me. I'm also very versatile. There's not really a shot that I don't have. It doesn't mean that there aren't shots that I prefer over others, but there's not really something that I feel like I can't execute on the court. Next thing I would say for myself is, aside from being athletic and versatile, is on my baseline game, I tend to favor hitting the ball heavy with more margin and a little bit more up and down. To be honest, I am working against that right now. I'm trying to become more of a driving player, because when I compete, I notice that most of my balls give high-level players too much time. But as of right now, I know that my immediate go-to on a court is to hit the ball heavy. I would like to say that I have a very level temperament on the court. I don't really get super upset. I don't really get super pumped up most times. You might see a fist pump here and there or a come on here and there, but you don't really see my mental state go too far up or too far down. I'm very even tempered. I tend to think of that as a positive. Some people would think of that as a negative. And I'm gonna leave it here for now. I could go on for probably 8 to 10 more bullet points on this side, but you guys get the concept of, you don't want to leave the stuff too open-ended. Now, if you want me to add 1 or 2 more to kind of give you a sense of like detailed stuff, I prefer to take my forehand inside out when I'm given the opportunity, and on my backhand, I'm really good at rolling at high cross. So those are my 2 go-to shots. I really want to start being able to put more balls away when I step inside the court, but as of right now, I'd actually consider that as a weakness. So what we're gonna do is jump to the weakness side, and I'm gonna put that right at the top. I have a current weakness of finishing points from inside the court. I have a tendency to, as we said on the positive side, I have a tendency to roll the ball by default. So under pressure, I find myself rolling balls back into the court when I should be driving them and putting them away. So I'm gonna put that on the negative of, I have trouble putting balls away when I'm inside the court because I feel like I hit the ball too slow. Another weakness of mine is my backhand down the line tends to clip the top of the net under pressure. So if I go for a change of direction, or I feel like I could go after the ball, if I'm not really set, I have a tendency to hit that ball a little bit too low when I go for my changes down the line. Another thing that I would say is a weakness of mine is my opening service game is usually my weakest one. I have a very high tendency of being broken early on in matches. I do a good job of fighting back to even out in most cases, but for whatever reason, my first service game is always really tight. And as you guys can see, that's something very specific to me. That's not something that you would just see on a stat sheet, but I know that about myself. I usually do a pretty good job getting returns in play, but I would not consider myself a strong returner. I want to be able to put more pressure and take more swings at returns. The problem I have right now is, as a returner, I feel like I block too many returns just to get the point started. And against higher level players, that gets me in trouble. That gets me on the run very early on in a lot of points. So I put that in the weakness category. Another thing that can happen to me is and this is a mental thing, I tend to think ahead too far. And as a result, I end up relaxing too much. So for example, let's say I'm up 4-1 in the set. You would never know that this is happening, but this is something that happens in my head. In my head, I'm like, all right, I'm up 4-1. I'm probably going to win this set 6-2. That is a very bad habit to have. And I'm working through that more. So in my head, I'm telling myself scores that haven't actually happened yet. I could easily have won the set 6-1, or I could easily be at 4-1 and lose the set 6-4, but I'm projecting stuff out in my head, and the problem is that makes me relax too much. So on my own scouting report, I'm writing these things down for myself because it also tells me how to work through these things in competition as well as in practice. Another thing that happens is my backhand tends to break down before my forehand does. But on my forehand side, I tend to be too aggressive too early. I have a problem of going rally, and then feeling like I have something to prove every now and then, so I'll go after a ball that I know I can do enough with, but at the same time I may be doing it too much. And then conversely, like I mentioned in the video we just did, I have this other habit that's on the other side of that spectrum, where in certain competitions I have a tendency to hit too polite. I hit like a coach because my profession is tennis coaching. So there's times when I'm in competition, but I can feel myself doing that coach hitting where I'm kind of just guiding the ball to the location that I want it to go to, or I'm not putting the ball close enough to a line, because when you're coaching, your reflexes are to give the ball to the person or give them a ball that they can handle. These are things that are very specific to me. So when you're filling out this scouting report for yourself, make sure you're going into detail with things that are very specific to you. Yes, you can say I like my forehand more than my backhand. That's important. Yes, you can say I don't like going to the net. I prefer to play the baseline. You can say that you're a big server. You can say that you have a really good kick serve or a really good slice serve. As much detail as you can, as long as it's relevant to you and your practice. Once you understand more about the way you want to play and more about your own player identity, you'll understand how to practice, because you have to do two things. One, you got to make sure you keep your preferences sharp, improve them. If you know that your inside out forehand is your bread and butter shot, you don't want to lose that. You want to make sure you make it even more lethal. You want to start figuring out, how can I get more angle on that shot? How can I get around that ball faster? How can I position myself in better scenarios to get to use that shot more often? And likewise, you want to start saying, all right, here's some of the things that I don't do well. Do I practice them so that I can do them a little better? Or do I find ways to hide those things and work around them? There's different ways of approaching it. But the point is, once you understand who you are on the tennis court, you also understand how to practice to better compete. A lot of people, as I said in the very beginning of this video, they don't lose because they're less skilled. They lose because they don't know how to play their own way. They're coming out, they're serving, returning, hitting balls, points go back and forth. One person's thinking, the other person's playing. And a lot of times, that could be the one thing that separates a win and a loss. Just one person being more aware of what they're trying to do than the other person. So hopefully this little exercise helps you guys out, and you guys really should take it seriously, because if you can do this well, it will definitely improve your quality of practice and match play and just mental acuity on what you're trying to execute on the court. Again, I hope this was somewhat informative, and if you guys liked it, show me a little bit of love, I guess. I don't really like doing the whole marketing thing, but hit the like button, subscribe, and do all those good things. And with that being said, that's going to close up this video. Thanks again, and we will see you guys in the next one.